Welcome to the Farmville February Board of Commissioners meeting, and it is good to see so many people out here tonight.
Man.
Thank you for being here tonight, and I think, you know, if you show up at the February meeting, you're obligated to attend the next 12 in a row. So thank y'all for being here tonight. We got a lot of things, some familiar faces, but folks we haven't seen in quite some time, so I'll refresh you. We do have an opportunity for citizens to speak at 2 times in the program. In the beginning, it's the citizens presentation where you're allowed 3 minutes to speak. Amy keeps the time. You will not get a response, questions, and/or criticisms from the board. It's just you speaking for 3 minutes and saying thank you. At the end of the meeting, you have an opportunity to come up and ask a question or questions about anything you've heard that you may need clarification on. So you'll have an opportunity to do that. So all having business with the town will be heard. And again, thank you for being here. With that being said, I'd like for you, if you wish, please stand and join us in the invocation being led by Commissioner Smith. The Pledge of Allegiance will be followed by Commissioner Flanagan.
Father, we come to you tonight as humble servants of our town. We ask for your guidance and your strength. We ask for your blessings upon our town. Lord, thank you especially for this opportunity to be here to do the right thing for your town, and we ask your guidance. We thank you for all the people that are represented here who've come and are interested in our works. Especially, Father, we thank you for your Son, Jesus Christ, and his sacrifice for us on the cross. In your name we pray, amen.
Amen. Mr. Flanagan.
Will you join me in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
If you have an agenda, the next item we have is citizen presentation. Stephen Hardy-Brass has come up tonight to speak about the ADAs.
Mr. Mayor.
Good to see you.
Commissioners, nice to all see you all again. I come before you once again, or some of you for the first time, speaking again about the Americans with Disabilities Act. As many of you know, or as you may learn, the ADA was passed in 1990. It's a federal civil rights act for people with disabilities. This mandates any local government agency that has 50 or more employees total, which Farmville does, to follow certain things, and has certain mandates in there about policies and procedures and coordinators and things that get done. As I've mentioned several times before becoming disabled myself, Farmville has a lot of barriers to complying with those legal mandates. There are at least over 100 sidewalk ramps that are missing on our roads. I've filed complaints and some legal action against NCDOT for their missing sidewalk ramps and tactile barriers and stuff. And they've come through and finished on the state roads, most of them. There's still several that are missing. For example, across the street from West Moore Street, Wall Street, and like Joyner Lane, there's some ramps missing adjacent sidewalks. There's been some confusion on some emails about exactly who is the town ADA coordinator. I've been told different people, and so like, we don't really have one. We don't have established policies, procedures yet, even though they were supposed to be done by 1992. In the law special 90, they gave you guys, the town, 2 years to do an inventory and a transition plan. Unfortunately, in our state, in 2013, Republican-led legislators actually banned, or legally, any standalone state funds for using for any standalone bike ped projects. So we're limited. So I'd like to ask you if you have your legislative agenda or help us with bike walk and see other people to actually fight that barrier to actually getting state funds to work on some of these issues. Furthermore, there's a great deal of federal funding that's going untapped right now that could actually pay for these things. So there are a lot of resources out there, but it still baffles me why here it is 30, 40 years, and we're still out of compliance with the Federal Civil Rights Act. And I'd like us to, not to have to come to speak to you guys again about it. It's a barrier to people with disabilities, elderly, people pushing strollers, kids walking. When we make it accessible for everyone, people with disabilities, we make it accessible for everybody. So, thank you for your attention to this matter.
That was the only citizen presentation we had. That'll bring us down to the town manager's comments. Mr. Hodgkins.
Thank you, Mayor. Members of the board, just have a couple things. In your packet at the back, under information, is the copy of our upcoming budget season calendar. It's just a copy for your information, and it's a similar schedule as last year. And of course, as we move through this, we'll be talking about various aspects of that process. The other thing I wanted to mention is many of you are aware of the public art that is on town property. There is a sculpture that is at the community center. There's also one outside the library, and there is a newer one that was installed down by the walking park. This is part of the Pitt County Arts Council Down East National Outdoor Sculpture Exhibition that the board started participating in 2017. And the first sculpture was installed at the community center in 18. And since that time, there's been a sculpture placed at that location annually ever since. Usually it's installed in February or early March. As I mentioned, there's 2 other sculptures that have been added since the initial installation. One at the public library that was gifted to the town by the Friends of the Library. That's a permanent fixture, and then there was a temporary placement at the walking park last year that was paid for by the Farmville Arts Council. I'm not sure if they're going to continue to do that or not. I have not talked to Fred Austin about that. But anyway, the existing sculpture at the community center will be removed on February 16th, and a new sculpture will be installed on February 27th. I am looking for a picture of the sculpture they're going to install. As soon as I get my hands on it, I will send it to you by email. But I wanted to let you know that, and for the benefit of the newer commissioners, that is a rotating annual event of changing out that sculpture, and it's just something that we've done. We were actually, other than Greenville, I think we were the second municipality in the county to participate in that program. So that's sort of consistent with our arts community persona now. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Okay. Anybody have any questions of town manager? Anybody? Seeing none, that'll bring us down to financial report. You have the financial report in your folder. Are there any questions of Amy or Commissioner David Hodgkins? Any questions? Seeing none, that brings us down to changes, additions, deletions to the agenda. Are there any changes, additions, deletions, or is there a motion to accept it as presented?
I'd like to just, if we could move one item out of the consent and into the discussion, and that's the part about the rural fire associations.
All right, let me see which one that is. Hold on just one quick second. Okay, item number 3 on the items of consent, Commissioner Flanagan has asked that may be moved from the wishes of the board. I'll take that in the form of a motion. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. That will move down to item number, hold on one second, I'll tell you where it's going to be. It'll be item number 12. Be item number 12. Okay, it'll be item number 12. Okay, now is there a motion with that being taken off that we accept the agenda as presented?
I move that we accept the agenda as presented.
Board, you've heard the motion. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it. That'll bring us down to a proclamation. I'm going to ask my dear friend Jeffrey Fields to come up. This is an honor and a privilege.
All right.
Don't let me get off script there, guys. Whereas much of formal honor and strength and stature can be attributed to the diversity of the cultures and traditions that are celebrated by residents of the town, whereas the African Americans have played a significant role in the economic, cultural, spiritual, and political development of Farmville while working to maintain and promote their culture and history, and whereas the result of their determination, hard work, knowledge, and perseverance, African Americans have made valuable and lasting contributions to Farmville, Pitt County, and the state of North Carolina, achieving success in all aspects of society, including business, education, politics, science, arts, and whereas in 1976, the African American History Month was formally adopted to honor and affirm the importance of the African American history throughout our American experience and to serve, promote cultural achievements ethnic pride, self-esteem by celebrating the lives and contributions of great African Americans. And whereas during African American History Month, all Americans are encouraged to reflect on the past successes and challenges of African Americans and look to the future to consider to improve their society, and that we may live up to the ideals of freedom, equality, and justice. Therefore, I, John Hope, Mayor of Farmville, do hereby proclaim February 2024 as African American History Month in Farmville, and urge all citizens to join me in paying tribute to the struggles and accomplishments of African Americans and encourage programs, activities, and honor the significant contributions of African Americans that have made the town, state, and the nation. 5th day of February, 2024. Sir, this is my copy. I'm gonna want mine back because they're gonna give you one much better than that.
All right.
Thank you, sir.
Mayor Moore, commissioners, town officials, citizens of this town, I'm proud today to be able to accept this proclamation on behalf of African Americans for this great town and for all citizens, because I believe something that Mayor Moore often says, I believe in it, and that's one Farmville. And as long as we can approach this as one Farmville, we can work together, right. We can live together, we can worship together, we can do all things together. And I'm a firm believer in that we can do better together. So on behalf of everyone, all the citizens of this town, I accept this proclamation, and I thank you for taking the time to want to recognize this month as Black History Month, February 2024 for the town of Farmville. Thank you.
Before you sit down, on behalf of the town of Farmville, I'd like to thank you and salute you for being selected by the Boy Scouts as the Outstanding Volunteer of the Year for the town of Farmville. Congratulations, and thank you for being here tonight. Thank you, sir. Thank you. They're going to give you a real one, okay? Yes, sir. Thank you. That brings us down to items of consent. Is there a motion we accept the items for consent? You're leaving off number 3.
I'll make a motion to accept items of consent.
Mr. Smith has made the motion. Board, you've heard it. Any questions or comments? All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it. That brings us down for items of discussion. Are you excited? Your turn. LaRue King, please come forward with presentation on a proposed clock tower for Farmville.
Mayor and town commissioners, thank you for your time. The Farmville Home and Lawn Garden Club would like to submit a proposal. For our project this year, we would like to present the town with the town clock. Each of you have received a picture and information regarding the clock. As you can see, this picture wasn't taken in Central Park, New York, although it could be, but it's a picture from downtown Farmville. We have considered several locations for this, and we would like to place it in the corner of Main and Belcher Street. Whether you are north or south, north or south, or day or night, you could see what time it is. Some of you may be concerned about the tree that's there where the clock is. Well, that tree is got sap is coming on one side, and on the back it's hollow and rotten. The Garden Club feels that the town clock would make a statement and add to the beauty of Farmville. It's a replica of the pocket watch like the one that our fathers or grandfathers carried. It is a step above an average town clock. This is a gift that will last generations to come and will be enjoyed by Farmvillians, our guests and friends that come to visit. This is a gift.
Board, do you have any questions? And I think this will be passed on to the planning board. Is that correct, David?
Yes, sir, normally it goes to the planning.
Okay. Do you have any questions of Ms. King?
Just out of curiosity, what other alternative locations did you consider? Pardon?
You just sit right there. You talking to Bert.
Okay, in front of the post office, where they put the tree, we can do that, but we can do that. The base of that clock is supposed to be 3 feet deep and about, 25, 30 feet wide of concrete to attach it to when it comes. And then we talk about the corner, Bob Parker's place, the corner there, where the light pole is. There's a bunch of us that went down there and measured. The clock was there. And the head of that clock is 45 inches wide. Okay, if you put it there, you're going to have 10 inches of that clock over the street. And, if they can't keep Christmas wreaths up on the light poles, they're sure not going to keep them clock there. The 18 wheels will hit, or other trucks that come through downtown. Because I have seen big trucks come out right downtown. And Bob Parker, I haven't got back to him yet. I wanted to. But if we put it on his plan, it's up for sale. And he said he'd put a lease on it for us to keep the clock there. But if somebody decides to buy it, and they don't want the clock there, the clock has to be moved.
Okay, just curious. Thank you.
Any other question? Anybody? Do we pass this on to the planning board now? Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. All you folks that are here support the clock, raise your hand. Any of y'all want to say anything? Well, come on up. I'd hate for you to come and not get a minute.
When I first came to Farmville, I was 20 years old, and this town is certainly smaller than Newbern. And I thought when I moved here, I said, well, I don't know whether I'm going to, be satisfied and whatever. But I loved Farmville from the time I came, and I love it just as much now. And I am so excited about this project. The Lord has really blessed Farmville. We have a beautiful town commons, and I just think this clock would be an added addition to the waterfall or fountain. And I'm so excited about it that I have decided to give $5,000 toward the cost of it.
Thank you, ma'am. And I know y'all are here to speak, but in lieu, is there anything that anybody can add to that so that we can move on? I think that kind of brings the train to the station. Thank y'all so much. Ms. King, we will get this to the planning board, and those two guys are sitting right there. They're looking right at you. They can't hide. Okay? And thank y'all, and thank you good folks for coming out. Let's move down now and speaking of the planning board's report on residential zoning. Justin, please.
Evening, Mayor and Commissioners. What we have here for tonight, I have with me Planning Board Chairman Todd Edwards. What we got for you tonight is kind of a two-part presentation. This is typically what you would receive from us at the board retreat, but in talking with David, I know our Monday agenda is looking very full, so we talked about going ahead and giving you guys this presentation tonight. So for the first part of it, I'm going to hand it over to Chairman Edwards here, and he's going to go over some of the accomplishments of the Planning Board from the year 2023. And then after that, I'm going to go over with you briefly one of the big items that the Planning Board was working on this past year were some residential district, was a residential district analysis. And from that, we have some proposed amendments that the Planning Board has been working on along with Stewart Planning, who are the consultants that we work with for the comprehensive land use plan update that was adopted back in 2021. So I'm going to go over some of the details of those amendments that you'll see coming to you at your meeting next month. for consideration for adoption. But for now, I'm going to hand it over to Todd, let him get started to go over the planning board report, and then I'll come back in after that and talk a little bit about those amendments.
Thank you, Justin. Mr. Mayor, Commissioners, it's good to be with you all here tonight. We've had a pretty busy year at the Planning Board, so I'll try to make this quick. If you look at the overview on your sheet, we dealt with one annexation, 2 rezonings, 1 special use permit, 2 text amendment changes, and 1 variance. So, and some of these came back to us multiple times, so that doesn't necessarily represent the number of touches. I'm going to run down the quick list. If y'all have any questions, please stop me and ask. But I think y'all are familiar with most of these. In the annexations categories, back on August 28th, 2023, we dealt with a request to annex parcel 03260 on Highway 258 and Stantonsburg Road into the town limits. That's what y'all know as the new Bynum Farm subdivision. Subsequently, as far as the rezoning goes, that same August 28th, 2023, there was a request to rezone that parcel from light industrial to residential R8, and the northern portion of that to highway business. And so that was approved by the Planning Board and the Commissioners. On July 11th, 2023, Pitt Community College was purchasing the old, I believe that was the old Alliance One International Sales Operations Center, formerly BILO, I think long before that. That Pitt Community College has bought that property, and there were several parcels involved with different zoning uses that kind of made up and attached to that property. It was a matter of just cleaning those parcels up so that sale could go through, and that action was taken, and I believe also went before you guys. Special use permits on May 9th, 2023, on 3438A and 3438B South Pitt Street. If y'all remember, there was properties there that had been on Paul's cleanup list for quite a while, and those properties were demolished, and Joe Hillard got a special use permit to put duplexes back on that property, and that has since taken place. That was a nice revitalization project there to clean up that area. Text amendments, November 14th, 2023. We had an amendment in the code, to the code ordinance, Title 9, Chapter 157, and that was to allow for home occupations in accessory buildings. That was kind of coming out of the COVID area, and home offices became quite popular, whether in the house or in accessory buildings, and that's just simply changing with the times. A lot more people working from home these days. Next on the agenda, we have coming up, as far as text amendments goes, I'm not going to get into that. This February meeting, we're going to get into the residential district amendments that we've been working with Stewart and Associates on, and Justin's going to handle that as part of his run through with y'all. But we've been through. That's been the bulk of our work this year, as we've looked at what makes sense zoning ordinance-wise, what has worked, what has not, where the holes are, what current development trends are, what are some hurdles and pitfalls to look out for. We spent a lot of time going item by item with those and really trying to right-size the norms to what fits Farmville, because sometimes things comes down from places on high that may work great in Raleigh but don't necessarily work great here. And so a lot of time has been spent on that. The Planning Board's done an excellent job reviewing that, and Justin's done a great job leading us through that process, and so hopefully you'll see the results of that real soon. Variances, November 14th, 2023, allowed, basically the Baptist Church, they were trying to solve a wheelchair ramp access issue. And Bobby, how many times do you have to come by for that? Twice, okay, well, that wasn't too bad. No, we were able to handle that. That was shouldn't have had to come twice, but I apologize for that. We were able to take care of that variance request And basically it entailed them coming a little closer to the road, barely closer to the road than allowed, but created a much better handicap access situation for the Baptist church. Upcoming projects in 2024, again, we have a comprehensive land use plan. We're wrapping that work up. And we're also looking at a study. Justin will go through that land use plan again. We're also looking at a study of our West Horn Avenue Gateway. We're going to looking at that whole complex as a lot of our visitors to town that come into town come in that way. They come to the ball fields. We've got a lot of recreation folks coming in and trying to create or look at what we can do to create a better entrance there, and maybe have some policies or what have you, or some things recommendations to make from a standpoint of having a little more inviting entryway there. Because if you go there on Saturdays or Sundays during the seasons, those fields are filled up. Lots of parents, lots of people, a lot of out-of-town folks, and so it'd be a good opportunity to make a good impression on folks. So there may just be some studies and recommendations done along those lines. And then we're also going to consider subdivision ordinance language on irregular lots. Best example I can give is like along Pitt Street down here, not far behind the community center. There's a lot of unusually narrow lots, and if the houses are gone there, some of those lots are just deemed unbuildable according to normal standards, just vis-a-vis their width. And there's some satellite examples of this all over town. Once we clean up the zoning ordinance, we're going to go back and look and see what we can do, just so we're not having to deal with each one as it comes. See if we can maybe approach that in some blanket fashion to make it a little easier to propose some redevelopment efforts in those areas where it's not having to start back and reinvent the wheel with that. So that's basically it for the activity. Like I said, a lot of that has been, the bulk of the work this year has been around this, this residential zoning review and alterations. But are there any questions? Yes.
I just have one. Is there any consideration of doing zero lot lines?
Well, where is it? Do we have that in?
I don't think we've discussed zero.
We've not discussed that. What we've done, we have done a lot in the way of lot reductions. We've taken a lot of hard looks at that. That's some current development trends that are going on. It's not zero lot line, but what it allows for, if you, in your normal R8, R5 zoning, where if you will go to back alleys or even set aside land, that tends to soften it. Sometimes what that can allow you to do is to reduce your setbacks by a certain percentage. The typical is when you do rear alley parking, or rear alley shared driveways, it can be a set aside greenway piece, but that allows you to reduce not only the overall lot size, but reduce the setbacks as well. And there's a formula for that. But that's been a successful way of creating a little right. Tighter, not zero right. lot line, but headed in that direction. Right. So kind of honoring that idea anyway. Good. So yeah, we're on that.
Flexibility.
Yes. So any others? All right. I'll turn it over to Justin then. Thank you. Thank you.
So as I mentioned and as Todd discussed, based off a lot of the discussion that the planning board had this past year, what's been developed and what was included in your packet are the recommendations that were discussed. And these were pretty much finalized by the planning board at their November meeting. The planning board was going to meet in January and formally recommend those to the board. However, we postponed our January meeting to February, so we're anticipating this action taking place at the meeting next week. But what I want to do is just to, before it come to this board, for recommendation of approval, want to be able to put this in front of you so that if you reviewed it and had some questions prior to it coming to you, you had a chance to talk with us and we could kind of explain, help clarify some questions that you may have. So I won't go too deep into this because it is quite a bit of information, but I'm going to try to do a quick overview tonight. But again, if you do have any questions on anything tonight or after the fact, feel free to stop by my office, give me a call, and we can go over it. But I'll get started. Essentially, as Todd sort of touched on, what we're looking at doing with these, we adopted the comprehensive land use plan back in 2022. And so what we're doing with these amendments are to help implement a couple of the policies that were developed as a part of that plan. One being Land Use Policy 3, which encourages residential growth and development in areas that are well served by utilities and services. And the other was Downtown Policy Number 2, which would encourage residential development in and near the downtown. So there's really 3 zoning districts in particular that we're looking at with this analysis. One of them would be a new zoning district that would be added to the zoning ordinance, and that would be the creation of an R10 residential district. As some of you may recall, the town did for a while have a R12 residential district, but I believe it was 2018. There was a cleanup of the zoning districts at that time, and the R12 was one of, I believe, 3 zoning districts that were removed at that time. But what we've looked at, what we've seen from going through the development of the land use plan, we feel like there needs to be a residential district for semi-suburban development that kind of catches that. Right now we've got a big gap between, you have R8 and then your next zoning district up is R15. So you're going from 8,000 square feet to 15,000 square feet right now. So there's a big gap between there. So we talked about that, and we identified that we felt like an R10 zoning district would be good to kind of have a sort of a middle ground there between that. So what we're looking at is introducing that R10 into the ordinance, and I'll just quickly go over it. There's some bullet points that sort of talk about what the requirements of the district would be. Of course, this would be a minimum 10,000 square foot lot. We would look at in these areas minimum common open space of 15% in developments. The minimum lot width would be 65 feet, but as we talked about, depending on the type of development, if there is rear alley loaded, as Todd was discussing, we do have some mechanisms within the ordinance that could allow you reductions both in your setbacks as well as your lot widths. So again, we're trying to incentivize these alley loaded developments. We did talk about landscape buffer areas as well, or either a berm or fence provision that will be located along major road frontages. And we also talked about sidewalks and street trees being provided on at least one side of the street. And I'll touch on that a little bit more here in a few minutes. We talked about sidewalks as well as a part of this. So that's kind of an overview of what we're looking at as far as the recommendation of bringing that R10 district back in. The next district that we looked at was the R5 district. And what we really wanted to accomplish with this, and I know Paul's going to talk about this a little bit more at his report to you at the retreat coming up in a couple of weeks, but as you know, Paul's been hard at work with going after the dilapidated housing, and a lot of that housing is located in our R5 zoning districts. And so what we want to do, what we have talked about as a department is, we don't want to just, knock down these old houses and have a lot of vacant lots sitting around town. What we as the board discussed is we want to have a way and find the best way to try to redevelop these areas once we get some of these old dilapidated houses down. But one of the issues that we find ourselves running into is that a lot of these lots in the R5 district are non-conforming lots. And so we've tried to come up with some mechanisms that will work to help re-incentivize development in these areas. You are looking at lots that are very narrow in a lot of places. And so what we've tried to do with the R5 is to come up, as Tom was mentioning, with some potential incentives or, that go back, of course, to the alley loaded or rear alley loaded parking, as well as, as Commissioner Hobson mentioned, not going necessarily to a zero lot line, but looking at some mechanisms that would, help encourage development when you may not necessarily be able to establish the full setback that the R5 district recommends. So with that, what we're looking at doing would be a lot width and size for a single family development in the R5 district. It would be reduced based on meeting the average for the current properties along the same side of the street within 400 feet. And that's something that we've kind of already used in the past in our ordinance. Typically, we haven't looked at necessarily the 400 foot, but we've looked at basically, which 400 foot is generally your block. But we've had situations in the past where, we've tried to determine what, would be a setback on a rebuilding a lot. And generally, we've used the average of the other existing structures in that area. So we've essentially borrowed from what we already had in our ordinance, and we're looking at establishing that in the R5 to help assist with redeveloping, some of these neighborhoods where you do have some existing structures that are still there. And so we're going to use this mechanism. We feel like this would help maintain the character in the neighborhood, but also make it easier to, build back on these properties. So in addition to that, we have the lot width minimums that have been changed. They would change the lot width minimums in the R5 right now to 55 feet, and then 45 foot if it was the alley loaded. And then also we're looking at changing the front yard setbacks to 25 feet, and again an additional 10-foot reduction down to 15 feet if the properties were rear alley loaded. The next district we looked at was the R8 zoning district. Again, this was looking at primarily from lot width and setback reductions. So again, what we're looking at here was to reduce the lot width from 60 foot from the existing 80 foot to promote infill development and to allow for some design flexibility. There's also a provision that will be added for a lot width of 50 foot. In the development of if it's alley loaded, and setbacks would also be reduced if they were alley loaded. And then finally, I mentioned there are some sidewalk requirements that we looked at. One of the things that we noted was that back when the town adopted its pedestrian plan about 10 years or so ago, there was a recommendation to include a requirement for sidewalks, but we don't currently have that, codified at this point. So what we looked at was making some recommendations as far as sidewalk requirements. And as you'll note, these are specific to the R10, the R8, and the R5 zoning districts. What we had discussed, when you get to an R15 or an RA20 district, a lot of the times the development in those areas are not dense enough to necessitate, providing sidewalks in those neighborhoods. So these requirements are, looking more so at your denser developments, your R10 and under, as well as looking at both the arterial and collector streets. So what we're looking at would be, as I mentioned, sidewalks being required along both sides of all arterial and collector streets. Sidewalks required on at least one side of internal streets in new developments in the R10, 8, and 5 districts. Sidewalks required to be a minimum of 5 feet in width and connect to existing or planned sidewalks at property boundaries. And where curb and gutter is used, ADA accessible ramps must be provided at the intersection and other key crossing points, which is something that the town has been working on, in the last, several years. I know we've had several wheelchair ramps here around the town common that we had come in that were bought that were not at ADA standard and have been brought to ADA standard. And again, any development we have moving forward would meet the ADA standards. So. And then finally, in cases where environmental and topographic conditions may require a sidewalk or may make required sidewalk provisions impossible, an alternative design shall be considered by the planning director. So essentially that would leave that in our discretion to come up with some design that would meet all the standards in the event that we have a particular situation where you couldn't do a more typical design. So that's just a kind of a quick run through. I know it's a lot of information, but I did want to go ahead and get this to you. As I mentioned, as Todd discussed, there's quite a bit of discussion that went into this over several meetings in 2023. And again, we're at a point now at the planning board where the board feels comfortable with what we have here and what's been presented to you this evening. Again, they will formally recommend this to the commissioners at our meeting next week. So this will be coming back to you most likely at your meeting in March. But again, just wanted to go over this with you this evening and give you an opportunity here over the next few weeks. If you've had a chance to look at it, if you do have any questions, feel free to ask, and I'll be glad to answer any questions that you have this evening this time.
Anybody got any questions of Justin?
I would just like to say thank you, Justin and Todd, for all the hard work. That is a lot of work going through those ordinances, and we appreciate y'all's dedication to what you're doing.
Thank you.
Anybody else? We'll see you in 15 days. Todd, thank you for your service, sir. Thank you very much. That brings us down. I don't know who's got this. David, I don't know if you got this or Chief wants this, to approve certificates requested by the NCDOT to rebuild and then enact some speed zones on certain routes here in Farmville. Is that you or is that Chief?
That's me.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so you may recall several, actually a couple years ago, DOT changed different highway designations around the area, 121, US 258 business, US 258, to US 264, US 264 alternate, several others around town. And so they are still trying to catch up on all their signage. And so many things that used to be US primary roads are now either moved to other roads or are now downgraded to secondary roads, SR roads. And so in order to clean everything up, the town has, the DOT board, or the Transportation Board has already approved these, but they need the concurrence of the town board of Farmville within the corporate limits to concur with those changes. So basically what these 10 certificates are asking you to do is to concur with the State Department of Transportation actions, which did not change any speed limits. All they did was assign the speed limits to segments of newly named roads. So, for instance, May Boulevard used to be 258 business, now it's 258. So, same speed limit, just a different road name so this is all just basically a clerical exercise. But the town board has to take formal action, so that's what these are all about. No change in speed limits, just changing the road labels to match.
So you're looking for a motion to approve these certificates. Is that what you're looking for?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Board, you've heard Town Manager. Any questions? Is there a motion that we approve the speed zone certificates?
I'll make a motion that we approve the speed zone certificates as requested by the North Carolina Department of Transportation.
Board, you've heard the motion by Commissioner Smith. Any discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it. That brings us down to item number 10 on our agenda, consideration for an amendment to the operation of maintenance agreement with Greene County Water Transmission. It's good to see you, Rich. Room's yours, sir.
Nice to be here. And what we've got for your consideration this evening, this is kind of a housekeeping item. This is kind of related to the water transmission system that allows Farmville and Greene County to purchase water from Greenville Utilities Commission. And when the system was first installed, there was an operation agreement that was put in place that basically said that the town of Farmville had sole responsibility to maintain those transmission system assets and would bill Greene County for their share of those operation and maintenance expenditures. And there have been a couple of amendments to that just basically as assets have been added to the system to verify that there's a shared cost of operating those assets. And recently Greene County has replaced their water system control system, and in doing so they put in equipment that allows them to record or read the water that Greene County purchases from GUC. They don't have any ability to control any of the assets, but they have the ability just to read that data, which they use in their reporting. And as part of that construction, they put a control panel in the metering building that's located up at Lanes Cross Road at the big elevated storage tank site. And in order to get the signal that was being transmitted to Farmville's control system, there was some analog splitter devices that were installed just specifically to allow Greene County to be able to read data. And so what we felt was appropriate was to acknowledge that the splitter devices and that remote control panel had been installed by Greene County, but those assets are solely for the benefit of Greene County. And what we felt was that operational agreement needed to be amended to state that Greene County is solely responsible for the operation and maintenance of those specific assets. So, Farmville doesn't have any cost responsibilities related to the maintenance of those features. So, whereas everything else has been shared, we want to make sure this is solely a Greene County expense. And we also noted in the review as the SCADA panel was put in there One of the prior agreements acknowledged that there was an internet communication to that site that allowed some data transfer and acknowledged shared costs there, and that internet has been disconnected. The communication method is radio now. So we are recommending the amendment, the operation agreement be amended just to acknowledge that internet service is no longer there, and so there is no cost participation related to that internet service. So what I've got for your consideration is a copy of that amendment number 3 and a resolution just recommending approval of that amendment subject to approval by the Greene County Board of Commissioners. And just in general information, Greene County was presented this amendment this morning, and they have approved the amendment. So don't want to change this, but they have approved the document. But that's a quick synopsis, and be glad to answer any specific questions related to that agreement.
Rich, thank you for all you do. Board, anybody have any questions of Rich at this point? Anybody? Questions of Rich? See it.
I assume that the placement of their equipment and the operation of that in no way can affect any of our equipment.
No, sir. Yeah, and all that was to make sure it was coordinated. Yes, sir.
Anybody else? Can I get a motion? Is there a motion to approve the resolution amendment number 3 to the joint construction, operation, and maintenance agreement?
I'll make a motion, let me read it here real quick, to approve the operation and maintenance agreement with Greene County Water Treatment Transmission Facility.
You've heard Commissioner Smith's motion. Any discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it. Rich, thank you again for all you do. Thank you so much. That brings us down to item number 11. Real quick, I think we're set to go. Board, do you have any consideration of final agenda for the annual Board of Commissioners? David, I'm going to turn this over to you. Anything we need to know besides voting on the agenda?
We just had some minor tweaks to the one you saw last month, one being, for instance, the planning folks came tonight to make their presentation. So a few little things related to time, certain things came up at a certain time, that kind of thing, but nothing major. So just, this is the final agenda, I promise. So just want you to weigh in on that.
For the benefit of our new members, that agenda that we do is very flexible. Sometimes we end early, sometimes we end a little late. I appreciate your consideration during that. Can I get a motion that we accept the retreat agenda as presented in your folder?
I make a motion that we accept the retreat agenda.
Dr. Hobbs has made the motion that we accept the agenda. Any discussion? All in favor say aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it. That brings us down to item 12, which was moved over from the item consent. I'm going to turn this over to David. He can explain this really quick for us. Commissioner Flanagan, since you've asked for this, I'll let you lead when the questions start. David, you want to run through this?
Okay, thank you, Mayor, members of the board. There was a meeting that was held with Mr. Robert May and others to discuss the rural fire tax. And as you may know, or if you read my memo, there's currently a 6-cent fire tax in the rural portion of the Farmville Fire District. Now, the Farmville Fire District includes what's in the land inside of the corporate limits, plus an area surrounding the existing corporate limits. Inside of town, there is no fire tax levied. Those operations are just supported by general revenues and things of the town. The area outside the portion of the district outside of the corporate limits is supported with a 6-cent fire tax. The Pitt County Commissioners controls the fire tax. This board does not have any say over whether the fire tax is changed or anything. So the rural fire department is considering requesting of the of the Pitt County Commissioners an increase in the fire tax rate. They have not determined what that increase is going to be yet, so that's why it's not reported in this memo. But they wanted to get your consent because right now, the 6 cents, the way the arrangement is with the county, the 6 cents that comes in through the fire tax goes towards fire operations, whatever. So the rural board wants to ask this board that if the Pitt County Commissioners vote to increase the tax rate by whatever amount, that additional increment, let's say it goes from 6 cents to 8 cents, that additional 2 cents that would come back to the town, and all that revenue comes to the town for Farmville Fire Department operations and capital and all that, that additional increment increase is set aside in a existing account called the Fire Truck Reserve, which is already in our budget. We already have money in it. It exists, so it would just basically the additional 2 cents or whatever the additional increase that the county commissioners approve, if they approve any, would just be earmarked and put in that account. The base 6 cents that we already get would just be treated as if, we already do, which is just normal fire operations. So that's basically, the reason you're getting it is not to change the tax rate, and nothing affects any tax rate of any citizen of Farmville town. It's just to, if they do increase the fire tax rate, that additional tax rate would be set aside by this board or by the town for that fire truck reserve.
So that happens outside of the county. I guess the county cuts us one check, and then the town is responsible for allocating the addition into that one.
Like all the money that is derived through the fire tax comes to the town of Farmville now.
Right.
And even if they increase the rate,
right,
it still would come here. It's just that part of that the increased part would be set aside in an earmarked fund, whereas now it just goes into fire department operations and capital and all that.
Okay.
And it could go in, what we do now, some of it does go into that reserve, but it's at the discretion of this board.
Right.
But this would specifically designate the additional incremental tax increase to that particular fund.
So that's why they're coming to us, because it ties our hands a little bit more than they have been with.
It does, and I think it was, I'm not sure, but the way I understand it, it just gives the rural fire board assurance if they go after this additional thing that'll be specifically tied to the fire truck fund.
Okay. And you answered some of my questions, but we don't know at this point what an estimate of the proposed increase is.
My understanding is that the board, I think the rural board hasn't met to discuss it yet.
Right, okay. And I've seen a contract from 2010 between us and them. Is that contract still in effect?
It is. A lot of the things are sort of null and void because things like the transfer of assets, of course, that occurred way back when.
Right.
It refers to a few things that don't exist, like a budget committee and things like that I don't think ever existed, but the crux of it is still in effect. The money that's collected is
right,
goes for fire department use only.
And just a general question, would that need to be, if they're successful with the county, and would that have to be, I think there's, as I read it, in all my years as a lawyer, that it somehow ties what our contribution is to their contribution coming from the rural fire.
I don't know. That's more of a legal question that we have. We would probably defer to the county, and our attorney and their attorney would have to discuss it. But legally, as far as I know, it certainly would have to be tied to fire expenses or use. But beyond that, I don't know.
So we may need to revisit that.
Right. Well, we've discussed internally here amending that 2010 contract, but not in any formal way, just sort of,
right,
because certain things have already happened, but this would be probably, we didn't ever pursue it because nothing really changed other than a few things. This might be the trigger to go ahead and update that agreement.
Okay. That's all.
You good, sir? Thanks, sir.
How often does the county remit it? Is that on an annual basis? Those funds?
I think it comes in through the year, doesn't it, Amy? As it's collected?
Comes in through the year as it's collected?
It comes in through the year, just like your property tax when we get. I believe is the way that goes.
I'm sorry, you said quarterly? So then quarterly, we'd be responsible to make sure those funds are
Set aside and,
right.
yeah, we've talked internally and there's not an issue with doing that. It's not a, as far as from a accounting standpoint, it's not a hindrance on the town.
Any other comments? Since this was moved to an item for discussion and decision, I'll entertain a motion, which basically, from what I understand, that we honor the request to designate the additional revenues derived in which time they come available for the fire tax rate increase to be designated for a fire truck. Is that the way I understand it? Is that what I'm looking for, David?
Yes, sir.
Commissioner Flanagan, could I get that from you?
Yes.
Thank you, sir.
I'm the one that caused it all this trouble.
No, sir, you're fine, you're fine.
I'll make that motion.
Thank you very much. Board, you've heard the motion. Any discussion? All in favor say aye. 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 The ayes have it. This brings us down to citizen comment. Is that correct? I've got so many notes here. Citizen comments. I'll ask that you if you have a question about anything you've heard here tonight or anything you need clarification on, if you have a question, we'll be more than glad to try to address it. But probably what will happen is we'll point you in the right direction to get that, okay? I do ask that you give your name and address when you come up in case we have to find you and ask for further information. Is there anyone wishing to make a citizen comment? Seeing none, thank you for your time. That brings us down now to where I go to the commissioners for their closing comments. Dr. Hobbs, I'll begin with you tonight, please.
Well, thank you. And since Mayor Moore gave us a proclamation on Black History Month, I would like to lift up George Washington Carver's comment. And he says, it is simply service that measures success. And I want you to know that we are here to serve Farmville and hope it will be successful.
Thank you, ma'am. Sir?
I'd just like to say thank you to the town staff who worked so diligently on a Sunday afternoon and into the evening fixing a water main busted on Pine Street. I think unfortunately, I think that might have been the coldest day we've experienced this year, and just want to say thank you.
Okay. Commissioner Shack, you always gonna be in the middle.
Always in the middle. But you know, we really appreciate everything that our citizens do here in our great town here, and we thank you for the many acts of kindness that you show towards all of us. And we're just thankful just to be able to come out and be a part of it.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Smith?
No, I'll echo the comments from everyone else, Mr. Hobbs. Special thanks to Jeffrey Fields for being here to accept the commendation from Black History Month. And also special thanks to the ladies of the Farmville Home, Garden and Lawn, or whatever, however it is. Thank y'all for y'all's presence and commitment here tonight. Also to Todd Edwards and the planning board, because I've worked on the planning board for a long time, and those ordinances are tough. So thank y'all for all the work y'all have done. And also to Robert May and the Rural Fire Department. I know they put a lot of work in on that. I hope that all that new, I guess it's an ordinance, goes to your satisfaction. But also to all the people at Farmville that really contribute a lot to our success, because without the people, we wouldn't be able to have anything.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Flanagan.
Well, Commissioner Evans stole a little bit of my thunder there. I was just going to point out that the town was out on that day, and I think by the time I knew about it, was over there just to take a look. It was two crew trucks, a mini excavator, a boom truck, and I don't know, 7 or 8 guys, or people elbow deep in it. And so that was a cold day and a Sunday as well. And there's examples of that all throughout the town, whether it's on the planning board or any other service organization. And so many people care deeply about this town, and I'm just thankful to be a part of it. So.
Thanks, sir. It was an honor tonight for the proclamation on a lot of levels. My generation, we came through civil rights, we came through Vietnam. I, for one, have studied 2 things. On this particular day in 1991, I was in the Persian Gulf. We got out of the Persian Gulf with a victory because of what the Vietnam veterans taught us in the 60s and early 70s, and I always salute the Vietnam veterans. But during the Vietnam War was also an opportunity to study and listen to Dr. King. And I will never be able to quote him and/or get it exactly right, Dr. Hobbs. But with this town board tonight and the town of Farmville, I think that Dr. King said one thing that we should all take away from here, put it in your own words, is we should not look at the entire staircase. We should look at one step at a time.
Right.
With that being said, is there a motion? We adjourn.
I'm so moved.
We have a motion. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank y'all.